Hi. Live at 4:30. I have to get my nephew to help me with the webcam. It's probably just because I'm old. Okay, so we're going to go into this workbook again, overcoming bipolar disorder, and that would be a colon, and then a comprehensive workbook for managing your symptoms and achieving your goals. I think I read all of this, so it was a big reference for my dissertation. So I want to read a little bit. I want to show you a very small workbook page, but it would be significant for somebody to do this if they have bipolar illness or even another mental illness. And then I want to read like 3 paragraphs, and then I want to read Jane's story, which is a real person, but they can only call her Jane, and her feeling about having an illness and her getting with either a psychiatrist, I think it was a psychiatrist, and she might be with a counselor too. So I think that'll be helpful, because I think real life examples are pretty are good and are cool, and I don't mean that in a disparaging or non-serious way. Okay, so a variety of psychological theories have been advanced to explain bipolar disorder. More recent psychological research has focused less on causes of disorder and more on factors that affect its course. In addition to psychoanalytic theories, several other approaches to understanding bipolar disorder have been advanced. Most of this theorizing is based on the research in depression that has been extended to bipolar disorder. This is because the depressive symptoms in bipolar disorder and unipolar depression are the same. And we spoke about unipolar a while back. Unfortunately, no clear psychological theory of mania has emerged. This is, let me give you the copyright. This is 2008. So there's been some research since then. I lost my place again. Give me uno momento, por favor. Okay, we're back. As you can probably imagine, no single psychological theory has a lock on bipolar disorder, but if you look at all the medications that work in managing bipolar disorder, you will find that the same is true for biology as well. How do social factors like stress help us to understand bipolar disorder? The research on social factors in bipolar disorder relates mainly to how stresses affect the course of the illness, specifically the number and severity of episodes. Johnson, 2005. It appears that stresses are of 2 types: physical stress and social stress. Physical stress, for some people, can trigger or worsen episodes. This can be anything from having the flu, to undergoing surgery, to sleep deprivation, to seasonal changes, to medications. Social stress can trigger or worsen episodes for most people. This can mean good stress, like getting a new job or taking a trip, as well as bad stress, like losing a job or fighting with a significant other. Interestingly, while most people can readily identify negative or threatening stresses, they're not aware that sometimes even positive stresses, successes at work or new relationships, for example, can be associated with the onset of symptoms. I would say that's something that not everybody is aware of. So, as with the psychological concerns, the exercise is meant just as it, no, that isn't where I want to go. So, this is a tiny little workbook page. At the top, it says physical stressor, M or D, which means manic or depressive, plus or minus social stress. So half of it is about physical stressor. The second half of it is about social stressor. For manic or depressive episodes, I just want to make sure I understand that plus and minus. M is for mania, D is for depressive. When we have positive stress can cause symptoms. After you describe the social stressor, add a plus for positive stress or a minus for a negative stress. Use a piece of paper if necessary. Now, I would do this because it's helpful, but if you have a counselor or a psychiatrist, I would show this to them because you might not understand much of this little chart that would help you. Okay, so this workbook is so great. So this is a module in the workbook, and it's called Working Your Core Values. Bipolar symptoms and your life's work. As we mentioned in the introduction, no one's goal in life is to have bipolar disorder. In the introduction, we made the more radical suggestion that no matter how disabled someone is with this condition, their core life goal is not to live with bipolar disorder. No one wants really to be a patient. People want to live full, happy, and independent lives. Freud once said that living well comes down to two basic things: love and work. Work is not necessarily something you do for pay, and it's not necessarily even volunteer work. It's what you want to create, what you want to make of your life. Certainly, it may be something related to career, but it may also be something related to making a home, a family, a hobby. That goes in the same sentence. Something that you would do that makes your life worth living, that makes you feel productive. Love is more about who you are rather than what you do. And who you are is almost always who you are in relation to other people. Usually it's family or friends, but in general terms, it may even be less intimate or not very close relationships with someone who's important to you and to whom you're important. So we have 3 more paragraphs before we come to I'm against fast food, but I was going by Burger King and the smell called out to me. My son used to be a vegan for 3 to 5 years. I don't remember how many. And one day, the burgers in Burger King called out to him. It's a funny story. All right, that's enough about me and my son. There is something very personal and intimate about the symptoms of what we have to call mental conditions, perhaps especially with symptoms of bipolar disorder, which has enjoyable highs as well as painful lows. Some feel that they're always sensed something was amiss, typically something on the depressive side, and then along the way they develop manic episodes. It can sometimes be difficult to stand aside from and look at these symptoms. It's not like looking at blood sugar levels in diabetes. Bipolar symptoms can be like a part of your very self because, as we mentioned, the symptoms affect thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. In addition, we have worked with enough people with bipolar disorder to have learned that many people have discovered the mild manic symptoms can be helpful and enjoyable. And in fact, sometimes people build their lives not just around, but also making use of this aspect of bipolar disorder. It is rare for people to find advantages to having depressive symptoms, although there is evidence from the lives of a number of writers and scientists that depression contributed to their worldview and creativity. That's Bauer, Bauer, reference 2008. Would they have traded their depression and their creativity for more stable mood and sense of self? And some people, sometimes there may be benefits as well as costs. So a basic question to be asked early in this workbook is this: what's wrong with having bipolar disorder? And the answer may be nothing unless it gets in the way of your living your life, doing your life's work, and reaching your goals. So this is Jane's story. Let me have a little Burger King soda. Okay, Jane's story. Jane was always a kid on the go and a high performer in the classroom and in sports. She had been a national class skier, and although she was finishing nursing school, she continued to be an avid amateur competitor. She got by on 4 hours of sleep, that's a red flag, was passionate about everything she took up, and wherever she went seemed to fill the room with her presence. She worked 80 hours per week, held a variety of supervisory nursing positions, and was a regional ski champ in her age bracket. She experienced several episodes of depression, but by and large was high energy and somewhat imposing person. She called her care provider after her driver's license was suspended for reckless driving and her third marriage was dissolving because of an extramarital affair she had impulsively begun. Her care provider suspected bipolar disorder type 2, and with the information from additional history taking, made the diagnosis. Jane strongly resisted the diagnosis, saying repeatedly, "This is just me. This is just who I am. If it weren't for these depressions, I'd be just fine." The work and treatment revolved around determining which high energy feelings and behaviors were helpful and which ones were harmful to her overall life goals and priorities. Counseling and medications were geared toward reducing the latter while preserving the former. For Jane, the first issue at hand prior to treatment choice was for both her and her care provider to come to terms with how these symptoms fit into Jane's life and her self-concept. Not unlike some other people with bipolar disorder, Jane hated to give up what seemed to her to be adaptive aspects of the condition, even though they often disrupted areas of her life that were important to her. So I think there's a lot of information in that. I'm going to try to stay with this workbook rather than going back and forth. I think it just might be easier. So I haven't mentioned, and it would take a whole episode, but in manic episodes for bipolar people, they can have a strong sexuality, an increased libido, which I'm just taking a guess as a psychological researcher that having three marriages and an extramarital affair in her third marriage, that this part of mania might have been one of her situations. I don't know. I don't know Jane. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. But I have this kernel of information from my dissertation that I can speak to well. That was my oral dissertation and the strength I had, because the written dissertation, you have to take an oral part of it, and I felt so confident. Not only did I have references, I read a lot of books on bipolar disorder. So it made me very confident in my oral part of my dissertation. So this was live at 4:10 or something. It really doesn't matter if my camera isn't going to work on my laptop. Pardon me. But I will speak to my nephew that worked for Apple for a couple years, and we'll see what can happen tomorrow. Have a good night. Take care. Bye-bye.